Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. The night was thick with rain, the kind that drummed hard against the tin roof of a small roadside garage just outside Houston. The smell of oil, rubber, and wet asphalt filled the air. Ethan Cole wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag, exhausted after another 14-hour shift. Bills piled up on the counter, and the red notice from the bank glared at him like a curse. His mother's medical bills sat right beneath it, the words, "Final Warning," stamped in bold. He turned off the engine of a Chevy he had just finished fixing when a sleek black sedan rolled into the garage, its headlights cutting through the storm. The car door opened, and a woman in a tailored navy coat stepped out, her heels tapping against the concrete floor. Water glistened on her hair, and her posture screamed authority. She was unlike anyone who ever set foot in that place. "Are you Ethan Cole?" she asked, her voice calm but commanding. He nodded, surprised by how easily she found him. "Yes, ma'am." "You got car trouble?" She shook her head once and placed a small velvet box on the workbench. When she opened it, a diamond ring sparkled under the flickering fluorescent light. "No. I am here for a different kind of repair," she said. Ethan frowned. "Sorry, I think you might be in the wrong place." The woman met his eyes directly. "I am Olivia Hart. I run Hart Industries. And I need you to pretend to be my husband for 2 weeks." The words hung in the air, impossible and absurd. Ethan stared at her, trying to make sense of what he just heard. "Your husband?" "Lady, I fix engines, not lives." Olivia crossed her arms, unbothered by his disbelief. "You will be compensated. $100,000. All you have to do is stay by my side, follow the rules, and keep your mouth shut." Ethan laughed under his breath, thinking this had to be some kind of prank. But her face did not flinch. The sound of thunder cracked outside as if the universe wanted to underline the insanity of it all. "Why me?" he asked finally. "Because," she said, glancing at the oil stains on his sleeves, "you look like someone who has nothing to lose and someone who will not fall in love with me." For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. The ring glittered between them like temptation itself. He thought about his mother's medicine, the overdue rent, the bank's final notice. It is just an act, right? No strings attached. Olivia's expression softened for the first time. A contract, not a love story. He let out a slow breath and reached for a pen. "Guess I am signing up for the strangest job of my life." As he scribbled his name on the contract, a drop of oil smudged the paper. Neither of them knew then that this small stain would become proof of the only real thing in a world built on lies. Outside, the storm raged on, and inside that dim garage, the fake marriage that would change both of their lives had just begun. The next morning, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and shining under a pale Texas sun. Ethan Cole stood at the kitchen counter of his small apartment, staring at the contract he had signed the night before. The ink was still smudged where his oily fingers had touched it. A check with 6 zeros sat on the table beside it, unreal and heavy. He had never held that kind of money in his life. His mother's medicine, the overdue rent, the garage debt, all of it could disappear with one signature. But something in his chest felt uneasy. He took a sip of burnt coffee and looked out the window at the street below, where old cars rattled by and kids rode their bikes to school. Normal life. Real life. What on earth had he agreed to? Before he could think too hard about it, a sleek black car pulled up outside. Olivia Hart stepped out, her movements crisp, efficient, as if every second mattered. She wore dark sunglasses and carried herself like someone used to giving orders and being obeyed. "Good morning, Mr. Cole," she said when he opened the door. "Your clothes for the next 2 weeks are in the car." We have a lot to cover before the first event tonight. Ethan blinked, still half asleep. Wait, tonight? The charity gala. You are my husband, remember? You should at least look the part. He rubbed the back of his neck, muttering, guess jeans and motor oil do not fit the dress code. Olivia ignored the joke and stepped into his small apartment. Her sharp gaze swept over the cluttered counter, the pile of bills, the photo of Ethan and his mother on the fridge. For a fleeting second, something softened in her eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Pack what you need, she said. You will stay at my estate until the contract ends. The drive to her mansion felt like entering another world. The long driveway lined with trimmed oaks, the marble fountain in front of the house, the staff waiting at the door, it all screamed wealth and precision. Ethan followed her inside, trying not to stare at the towering chandelier or the endless hallway lined with art he could not name. This place is bigger than my entire neighborhood, he muttered. Olivia glanced back. You will get used to it. I doubt that. A maid handed him a suit bag and Olivia led him upstairs to a guest room that looked more like a hotel suite. Dinner is at 7, she said. We will go over how to behave, what to say, and what not to say. This arrangement is business, nothing else. Ethan nodded, still taking in the absurdity of it all. Understood, ma'am. She turned to leave but paused at the doorway. Do not call me ma'am. Call me Olivia. My husband should know my name. He almost smiled. Yes, Olivia. Hours later, he stood in front of the mirror in a tailored black suit. The reflection staring back at him barely looked like the man from the garage. He tugged at the collar, uncomfortable. You look fine, Olivia said from the doorway. She was dressed in silver, the diamond ring glinting faintly under the light. For a moment, Ethan forgot to breathe. He quickly looked away. You sure this is going to work? It has to, she said simply. People are watching, and appearances matter. The car ride to the gala was silent except for the hum of the engine. Olivia scrolled through her phone, while Ethan stared out the window at the city lights. When they arrived, the flash of cameras exploded around them. Reporters shouted questions. Mrs. Hart. Who is the lucky man? Is this the mystery husband you mentioned? Olivia smiled for the cameras and slipped her arm through Ethan's. Yes, she said smoothly, this is my husband, Ethan Cole. The words echoed in his head as they walked up the red carpet together. He leaned in just enough to whisper, you sure about this? She did not look at him, just kept smiling for the cameras. Smile, Ethan. You are living your part now. Inside, the gala was a sea of glittering dresses and tuxedos. Music swelled, champagne sparkled, and somewhere between the flash of lights and polite laughter, Ethan realized this was more than a contract. This was a world built on illusions and he had just stepped into the biggest one of all. The ballroom shimmered beneath chandeliers, each crystal catching the light like stars caught in glass. A string quartet played softly, and the air smelled faintly of roses and champagne. Ethan followed Olivia's lead as they weaved through a sea of elegant strangers. Every handshake, every polite smile felt rehearsed. Olivia was perfect poised, distant, unshakable. He, on the other hand, felt like an imposter in a rented suit. Remember, she murmured without turning her head, less talk, more smile. Yes, I mean, Olivia, he whispered back. Her hand brushed his arm briefly, a warning and a reassurance all at once. They stopped when a gray-haired man approached, his grin too wide to be sincere. Olivia Hart, he said. So this is the mystery husband we have been hearing about. Olivia's lips curved into a calm smile. Ethan Cole, she said, gesturing with quiet confidence. My husband. Ethan extended his hand, firm but modest. Pleasure to meet you, sir. Hart Industries marrying into blue-collar America, now that is something, the man chuckled, but his tone carried the kind of edge that cut deeper than humor. Olivia's smile did not falter. Integrity knows no class line, she replied smoothly, and the man moved on. Ethan exhaled slowly. You are good at this, he muttered. Years of practice, she said without emotion. The night went on in a blur of conversations and photographs. Ethan tried to stand still, but his eyes kept drifting toward Olivia. How effortlessly she handled pressure, how her laughter never quite reached her eyes. Later, when a reporter asked about the diamond ring on her finger, Olivia paused. Every ring has a story, she said lightly. This one started in the most unexpected place: a broken car. The crowd chuckled. Ethan raised an eyebrow but kept his expression neutral. When the questions turned personal, Olivia slipped her arm through his and smiled for the cameras. That will be all, thank you. As they left the crowd, she exhaled quietly. You did well tonight, she said. You did not say anything stupid. That is my new specialty, he replied dryly. She almost smiled. On the drive back, the city lights reflected off the car windows, scattering across her face like fragments of another world. Ethan watched her in silence. For the first time, he noticed the faint tiredness around her eyes, the quiet weight behind her confidence. When they reached the estate, Olivia removed her jewelry and set it on the vanity table. You can relax now. The first event is over, she said, removing the ring and setting it down with a soft clink. Ethan leaned against the doorway. Tell me something, Olivia. Why go through all this trouble? Why fake a marriage at all? She hesitated, meeting his eyes through the mirror. Because some people only respect a woman if she has a man standing beside her, she said simply. And tonight, it worked. Ethan frowned. You should not have to prove yourself like that. That is easy for you to say, she murmured. You fix engines. I fix perceptions. The silence that followed hung heavy. She glanced at him again, softer this time. Thank you for playing your part. You are welcome, he said, but something in his tone made her look up again. You think I am ridiculous, do you not? She asked. No, he said quietly. I think you are lonely. The words landed between them like a spark, sharp and unexpected. Olivia turned away, her posture stiff. Good night, Ethan. He nodded and stepped out, closing the door behind him. In his room down the hall, he loosened his tie and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his calloused hands. He thought about the gala, the lights, the way she smiled for everyone but herself. Somewhere deep down, something about this arrangement felt less like a contract and more like a collision waiting to happen. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, carrying the faint echo of the evening's music like a promise neither of them could quite name yet. The following morning, the estate buzzed quietly with routine. The staff moved like clockwork, polishing marble floors and trimming hedges under the soft Texas sun. Ethan stood on the back porch, sipping coffee that tasted far too expensive for his tongue. He still wore his rolled-up sleeves and grease-stained watch, the only reminder of who he used to be. From the balcony above, Olivia watched him through her sunglasses, her phone pressed to her ear as she handled business calls in that calm, clipped tone that demanded attention. Every inch of her looked composed, but her eyes betrayed fatigue. When she finally joined him outside, she handed him a folder. Our next event is a shareholders' luncheon, she said. You will be expected to make small talk, nothing more. Speak less, smile more. You keep saying that, he replied, half smiling. You think talking is dangerous? For most men, yes, she said without missing a beat. Ethan laughed, a deep, genuine sound that startled her. You do not get a lot of jokes in your life, do you? Jokes do not fix balance sheets, she said, but the corner of her mouth twitched as if she might disagree. Later that afternoon, a stylist arrived to give Ethan another round of lessons. He was taught how to toast properly, how to walk beside her, and how to hold her hand in photographs like it was the most natural thing in the world. Too stiff, the stylist muttered, adjusting their grip. Pretend you actually care about her. Ethan shot Olivia a teasing look. Well, that might be the hardest part of the job. Then try harder, she said, but there was a flicker of amusement in her eyes. As the week went on, the boundaries between pretending and being started to blur. Olivia caught herself waiting for his footsteps in the morning, for his dry humor that disarmed her stress. He repaired a jammed door hinge himself, saying, "A house this expensive should not squeak like a mouse." She found herself smiling more than she wanted to admit. That night, they sat in the study, finalizing notes for the luncheon. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. "You could have chosen anyone for this," Ethan said, eyes on the papers spread across the desk. "A lawyer, an actor. Someone who knows this world." Olivia looked up from her laptop. "I did not want someone who would lie too easily." "And you think I cannot lie?" "You are bad at pretending," she said softly. "That is why I trust you." The air shifted, heavier now. He held her gaze for a long moment, the words she did not say lingering like perfume in the room. When the luncheon day arrived, Olivia guided Ethan through the maze of executives and investors. Everything went smoothly until a reporter cornered them with a smirk. "Mr. Cole, what was it about Olivia that won you over?" The question hung in the air, sharp and mischievous. Ethan could feel Olivia tense beside him. He smiled faintly and said, "She came into my life like a storm. I did not see her coming, but I would not change a thing." The crowd laughed softly, charmed. Olivia turned her head slightly, just enough for him to hear her whisper, "That was not in the script." "Maybe I am improvising," he murmured back. Her expression softened for half a second before she turned to face the cameras again. When the luncheon ended, they returned to the car in silence. "You handled that well," she said at last. "You are getting good at this." "Maybe I am starting to like it," he replied. "Careful," she warned, her voice quieter now. "This is not real." "Sure," he said, but the look in his eyes told a different story. Back at the mansion, Olivia removed her heels and walked barefoot through the marble hall. Ethan lingered near the door, watching her in the fading evening light. For the first time, she looked almost humano armor, no mask, just a woman trying to hold her world together. "Good night, Olivia," he said softly. She turned, hesitated, and then nodded. "Good night, Ethan." When he left, she looked down at the diamond ring glinting on her finger. It was supposed to be a prop, a symbol of control. But as her reflection flickered in the mirror, she could not help but wonder when this lie had started to feel dangerously close to the truth. The days passed faster than either of them expected. The arrangement that began as a transaction was now a rhythm they both understood but refused to name. Olivia worked through meetings, press calls, and endless emails, while Ethan kept finding quiet ways to make her laugh. Sometimes it was a sarcastic comment about her board of directors, sometimes it was how he rolled up his sleeves to help the kitchen staff fix a broken coffee machine. The employees liked him, and Olivia noticed. One evening, she returned from the office later than usual, exhausted, her phone buzzing non-stop. Ethan was in the garage, sleeves rolled, working on an old motorcycle that had been sitting there since before he moved in. "You are supposed to be pretending to be rich, not covered in oil again," she said from the doorway. He grinned, wiping his hands with that same old rag. "Rich people need hobbies too. This one just happens to have bolts and grease." She stepped closer, curiosity getting the better of her. "Does it even run?" "It will," he said. "Everything broken just needs patience and the right hands." The way he said it made her heart stir in a place she thought was long frozen. She watched him for a moment longer, the smell of oil and metal strangely comforting, then turned away. "Dinner is ready," she said softly. That night, they sat across from each other at the long dining table, a candle flickering between them. Olivia noticed how much quieter the house felt when he was there, less like a mansion, more like a home. "Tell me something," Ethan said, his voice steady but curious. "Do you ever get tired of pretending?" She looked down at her plate. "All the time." "Then why keep doing it?" "Because people expect perfection," she said. "And I gave up the right to be ordinary a long time ago." Ethan leaned back, studying her. "Maybe perfection is overrated." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the contract, the cameras, the pretense, all of it seemed to fade. But before either of them could say more, a butler entered with a tablet. "Miss Hart, urgent news from the board," he said. Olivia stood immediately, professionalism snapping back into place. The warmth in her eyes vanished, replaced by the steel everyone expected from her. "Excuse me," she said, walking out of the room. Ethan watched her leave, a sinking feeling twisting in his chest. Later that night, she found him in the study. "The board wants to audit the merger paperwork," she said. "They are questioning my judgment again." "Because of me?" "Partly," she admitted. "Some think I have lost focus since the marriage." "That is funny," he said bitterly. "They do not even know it is fake." "Exactly," she whispered. He stood and walked closer, the air between them tightening. "Then what happens when this contract ends? You go back to your perfect world, and I go back to mine?" She met his gaze but could not answer. "Instead," she said, "you will get your payment. I keep my reputation, that is all either of us wanted, remember?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Maybe that is all you wanted." He turned away before she could reply. For the first time since this began, Olivia felt something she could not control, a flicker of fear, not of exposure, but of losing something real. Hours later, unable to sleep, she walked downstairs. The motorcycle in the garage gleamed faintly under the light. Ethan was asleep on the nearby workbench, his jacket draped over his shoulders. She stood there quietly, watching him breathe, the edges of her heart softening in the silence. For a woman who built her life on logic and contracts, the feeling scared her more than any corporate risk. She picked up the old rag he always carried and folded it neatly beside him. "You have a way of fixing things you should not," she whispered. The next morning, Ethan woke up to find the rag folded perfectly, a small silver note beside it in Olivia's handwriting, "Thank you for being real." He smiled faintly, unsure if it was a message of kindness or the beginning of something he was never supposed to hope for. By the time the second week arrived, the line between what was real and what was pretend had blurred beyond recognition. The mansion no longer felt like a place Ethan was borrowing, it felt like somewhere he belonged, though he would never admit it. Olivia tried to maintain her usual distance, but the rhythm between them was shifting. At breakfast, she would wait for him to join before eating. At night, she would linger by his workshop, pretending to check her phone while her eyes followed his movements. The motorcycle was almost finished now, the old engine coming back to life one careful piece at a time. "You know," Ethan said one afternoon as he wiped his hands, "this thing has been sitting here for years. All it needed was a little attention." "Maybe you should teach me," Olivia replied, standing by the doorway. "You? With a wrench?" "Do not underestimate me," she said, raising an eyebrow. "I have built an empire." "Empires fall apart if you forget how to hold the small pieces together," he said quietly, and something in her chest tightened. That night, a thunderstorm rolled over the estate. The power flickered once, twice, then went out completely. Olivia stood in the dark hallway, her phone light barely cutting through the shadows. "Ethan," she called out, his voice came from the kitchen. "I am here." He appeared holding a flashlight, his face half lit, half shadowed. "You all right?" "I am fine," she said, though her voice wavered. "I just hate the dark." He smiled faintly. "You? The woman who terrifies half of Wall Street?" "The dark is different," she admitted. "You cannot control it." He stepped closer and handed her the flashlight. "Then let someone else handle it for once." For a few seconds, the world outside vanished, replaced by the quiet hum of rain on the windows and the space between them. "You do not have to be strong all the time, Olivia," he said softly. "No one is watching now." Her breath caught. No cameras, no board members, no audience, just the two of them. She wanted to speak, to deny it, but instead she whispered, "You make it sound so simple." "It is," he said. "When it is real." The thunder cracked overhead, startling her, and without thinking, she reached for his arm. His hand came up instinctively, steadying her. They stood like that for a moment, the air thick with everything they were not supposed to feel. "Ethan," she said finally, pulling back, her voice barely audible. "We cannot." "I know," he said. "Contract, rules, appearances. Believe me, I remember." "Good," she said, though her tone lacked conviction. When the lights returned a few minutes later, the spell broke, but something inside both of them had already changed. The next day, Olivia avoided him, throwing herself into work. Her phone buzzed non-stop with messages about the audit, and she snapped at her assistant more than once. But that night, as she walked past the garage, she heard music playing softly, Ethan's old radio tuned to a country station. He was polishing the motorcycle, humming under his breath. She stood there silently until he noticed her. "Could not stay away, huh?" he said with a grin. "Do not flatter yourself," she said, but her voice was gentle. He handed her a wrench. "Hold this." "What am I supposed to do with it?" "Just be here," he said simply. She took it, feeling ridiculous but oddly calm. Together, they tightened the last bolt, and when the engine roared to life, the sound filled the space between them like laughter. "It is alive," he said. "You did it," she replied. "No," he corrected softly. "We did." The words hung in the air, simple yet dangerous. She turned away before he could see the faint smile tugging at her lips. Later that night, alone in her room, Olivia touched the folded rag he had left on her desk earlier, the one he always used when he worked. She found a note tucked inside, "For the things worth fixing." She closed her eyes and exhaled. Somewhere deep down, she knew they were both breaking the first rule of their contract. But for the first time, she was not sure she cared. The following morning began too quietly. The storm had cleared, but something in the air felt off. Olivia barely touched her coffee, distracted by the flood of emails lighting up her phone. Ethan noticed from across the table. "Bad news?" he asked. "Just business," she said curtly, but her knuckles were white as she scrolled. A few minutes later, the butler entered with a pale expression. "Miss Hart, Mr. Lucas Bennett is here to see you." The name made her stiffen. Ethan had heard it before. Lucas, her former fiancé, a board member, and one of the few men powerful enough to challenge her. Olivia stood, smoothing her blazer. "Send him in." Lucas walked in with his usual polished arrogance. "Olivia," he said smoothly, "you look radiant as always." His eyes flicked toward Ethan, and a faint smirk appeared. "And this must be your husband. The mechanic, right?" Ethan's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. "What do you want, Lucas?" Olivia asked. "I came to warn you," he said, his tone dripping with false concern. "Rumors are spreading that your so-called husband is not who he says he is. That this marriage is convenient." "Convenient," she repeated, narrowing her eyes. "That is an ugly word for a private life." Lucas leaned closer. "You know how this world works. One scandal, one wrong story, and everything you have built could crumble. I could help you manage it, if you come to your senses." Ethan finally spoke, his voice calm but edged. "She does not need your help. Or your threats." Lucas turned to him, smirking. "Careful, grease boy. This is not your garage. You are out of your depth here." Olivia stepped between them. "Enough. You are not welcome here." Lucas chuckled. "You might regret that, Olivia. The board meets tomorrow. Let us see how loyal your people really are." When he left, the silence he left behind felt poisonous. Olivia turned to Ethan. "Why did you say anything?" "Because he was insulting you." "I can handle him," she snapped. "I do not need a hero." Her tone cut deeper than she intended. Ethan stared at her, hurt flashing in his eyes. "You do not need anyone, right?" "Got it." He turned and walked out before she could stop him. That night, Olivia sat in the dark study, staring at the diamond ring gleaming faintly under the lamp. Every decision she had ever made was calculated, precise, but this one felt like it was slipping away from her control. The next morning, the headlines confirmed her worst fear. A tabloid article splashed across the newsfeed: CEO Olivia Hart's marriage to small-town mechanic exposed as business deal. Her phone exploded with calls, messages, and outrage. Ethan walked into the room, holding his phone, his expression unreadable. "You saw it," he said quietly. "Yes," she whispered. "Lucas did this." "Then tell them the truth," he said. "Tell them it was fake." She looked up, her eyes glistening with conflict. "If I do, it will destroy both of us. They will call you a gold digger and me a liar." Ethan took a deep breath. "Then what do you want me to do?" She hesitated, her voice breaking. "Leave. Before they tear you apart." The words hit him like a physical blow. He stared at her, then at the ring still on her hand. "That is what you really want?" She swallowed hard but nodded. "Yes." Without another word, Ethan turned and walked out of the mansion, the sound of the door closing echoing through the halls. For the first time in years, Olivia felt truly alone. And for the first time, the silence she had always craved felt unbearable. For 2 days, the mansion felt like a hollow echo of itself. Olivia buried herself in crisis control, firing off statements and legal responses, but the damage was spreading faster than she could contain it. The board had called for an emergency meeting, and whispers of her removal were already circulating online. Every headline, every comment, every doubt was a blade she could not dodge. Ethan, meanwhile, had gone back to his small apartment on the outskirts of the city. The garage was quiet, almost peaceful, but it did not feel like home anymore. He tried to work, but every time he looked at the rag she had folded for him, that neat handwriting in silver ink, "Thank you for being real," the ache in his chest grew heavier. On the morning of the board meeting, he turned on the radio. The anchor's voice carried the headline: Hart Industries faces leadership scandal as CEO Olivia Hart's marriage called into question. He clenched his fists. He knew exactly who was behind it. Lucas Bennett. The man had wanted her position for years. Ethan could have stayed out of it. He could have let her fight alone. But something inside him refused to. He grabbed his jacket and the small USB drive he had recovered from the garage security system before leaving the mansion. There was footage on it, proof that Lucas had been the one to leak the story to the press. At noon, the boardroom at Hart Industries was packed. Cameras flashed outside. Olivia stood at the head of the table, surrounded by men twice her age and half her courage. Lucas leaned back in his chair, confident. "Olivia," he said smoothly, "it would be better for everyone if you step down quietly." "You have no proof that I have done anything wrong," she replied, voice steady. "Your personal choices have compromised this company," he said. "Your fake marriage made us a laughingstock." Just then, the doors swung open. Every head turned as Ethan walked in. He looked out of place in his worn leather jacket, but his eyes were calm and certain. "You want proof," he said, setting the USB on the table. "Play that." Olivia froze. "Ethan, what are you doing?" "Fixing what should have never been broken," he said simply. The screen lit up. Footage from the garage appeared: Lucas meeting a reporter in secret, exchanging documents, laughing as he handed over the story. The room erupted in murmurs. Olivia stared, speechless, as the truth unfolded in front of everyone. "You leaked it," she said quietly, her voice trembling with anger. "You tried to destroy me." Lucas's face drained of color. Security moved in at her nod, and within minutes, he was escorted out. The boardroom fell silent. Ethan turned to leave, but Olivia called out, "Wait." Everyone else filed out, leaving them alone. "Why did you come back?" she asked. "You told me to leave." He met her eyes. "I did not come back for the company. I came back for you." Her breath caught. You are impossible, she whispered. You fixed everything. It is what I do, he said with a small smile. I fix things. She laughed through the tears she had been holding back for days. I am starting to believe that. He stepped closer but stopped just short of touching her. Then tell me one thing, he said. Was any of it real? Olivia hesitated, her walls crumbling. More than I ever meant it to be. For a moment, the world around them went still. The lie that had once protected them had now become the only truth that mattered. A few weeks later, spring settled over the city, washing everything in warm light and new beginnings. The chaos had faded, the scandal had died, and Hart Industries had not only survived but risen stronger than before. Olivia was back in control, her leadership praised for its resilience and transparency. But what the world did not know was that behind every statement, every bold decision, there was a quiet memory of a man who had walked away once and returned when it mattered most. Ethan had refused any payment for what he had done. When the board offered a public commendation, he had simply said, I am not part of your company. I just did what was right. Then he had gone back to his garage, back to the smell of oil and the hum of engines. For weeks, they did not see each other. Yet every night, Olivia would find herself looking at the folded rag still resting on her desk, the one she could never bring herself to throw away. On a quiet Friday afternoon, she drove out of the city without her driver, following the familiar road that led to the small garage with the flickering neon sign. Ethan was under the hood of an old truck when he heard the engine of her car pull up. He wiped his hands, half smiling even before he turned. If you are here to complain about your car again, I am charging double, he said. Olivia stepped closer, her tone softer than he had ever heard. No business today, she said. I came to return something. She opened her palm. It was the diamond ring, the same one that had started everything. You forgot this, she said. Or maybe I did. Ethan looked at it, then at her. You do not have to give it back. It was never really mine. Maybe it was never really fake, she said quietly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The traffic on the highway hummed in the distance, a soft reminder that life kept moving. Olivia, he said slowly, what are you saying? She took a breath, her eyes steady on his. I am saying the contract ended, but I am still here. No rules. No signatures, just me asking if you still believe in fixing things. He smiled, that familiar half grin that always melted her defenses. Depends, he said. Are we talking about cars or hearts? Both, she answered. He took the ring from her hand, holding it for a moment before slipping it gently onto her finger. Then let us make it official, he said. For real this time. She laughed softly, her eyes glistening. This time, no lawyers? No lawyers, he promised. The sun dipped lower, painting gold across the chrome and glass. They stood there in the quiet, two people who had started with a lie and ended with the one thing neither expected: truth. Months later, a new sign appeared outside the garage, Coal and Heart Restoration. Underneath, in smaller letters, it read, Honesty Rebuilt. Inside, the motorcycle that had once been just a project sat polished and complete. Olivia traced a finger over the engraved plate on its side that read, For the things worth fixing. She turned to Ethan, who stood beside her with the same calm smile she had fallen for. So, he said, what do we fix next? She leaned in, resting her head against his shoulder. Whatever breaks, she whispered. The camera of life pulled back slowly, catching the reflection of the two of them in the window, no longer pretending, no longer hiding, just a woman who had learned to trust again and a man who had reminded her how.